Sega had a strategy for every console release. This strategy revolved around porting their arcade games to the new home console, which would help them build up a library of arcade hits to try to drive people to buy their new console. This is pretty much how Zombie Revenge was released onto the world. It was a port of an arcade game that was a spin-off of House of the Dead. It's fine. I don't have anything really wrong with it. So this is an arcade beat-em-up that has a story to it, or at least one that's somewhat tied into what House of the Dead was, and I mean that very loosely. So in this game, the US government was conducting an experiment to turn dead bodies into zombie soldiers. I think everyone kind of knows how this was going to go, and the government, even in this game, probably should have figured it out. But some mysterious person named Zed takes control of the project and releases the zombies in some unnamed city. And it's up to you to stop him. For some odd reason, AMS gets involved because they need to tie this into House of the Dead. And I'm sorry, I forgot what AMS actually stands for. So you go through the city as one of 3 playable characters, and you kill zombies and defeat the weird mutant zombies that are the stage bosses. It's a simple story, but it's really all you need for a beat-em-up. I really wanted to like the gameplay a lot more than I did. It isn't bad, but the guns felt like they were more of a hindrance than actually helpful. I would have liked the game a lot more if they had made the guns stronger, or if they had just gotten rid of the guns altogether and just had you use like a baseball bat or a crowbar or something like that. The pistol is really a holdover from House of the Dead, and that's where a lot of the similarities with that game come from. You have to reload your pistol at times during this game, and it comes at really awful times, because your enemies are basically bullet sponges, especially as the game goes on. And while that works for House of the Dead, for a beat-em-up it was really annoying. So you do have a melee attack and your long-ranged attack. Stupidly, I didn't read the manual before playing this game, and I just figured it was a beat-em-up and the controls would be pretty simple to learn. They are, but you have a whole bunch of other things that are possible that you can do with this. Like, you have charged attacks for both your punch and for your gun, and then you have your dash button and a few other things that can be done that I just felt like they were making it way too complicated. And it also felt like they were trying to drive you towards buying the arcade stick for the Dreamcast that had 6 buttons. It just felt a little awkward. The game does have a whole bunch of game modes to it, so you can do the arcade mode, and then there's the original mode, which itself has 3 modes. So if you want to play on the original mode, you can select between normal, which doesn't change anything from the arcades, or you can pick gun, which makes your gun stronger, but your punches and kicks weaker, or you can choose bare knuckle, which makes your melee attack stronger and your gun weaker. It's fine, to be honest. I didn't really have any problem with it. There's also a boss rush mode, which is pretty great, and a fighting mode that I didn't go into, but probably would have been cool if I had a second player to go through this with. Like I mentioned earlier, there are 3 playable characters, and I didn't see any stats on the screen, so I don't know if one of them does melee attacks better or one of them does gun attacks better and one is neutral. But I'm guessing that was the way it was set up, but that didn't occur to me, or I didn't notice that while I was playing it. The level design is pretty much what you would expect for a beat-em-up like this. Things are pretty confined at times. You'll fight the bosses in a somewhat open area so you can maneuver around them. A lot of the stages will just be like linear hallways, which don't really work out that well. You're not going to fight a whole lot of enemies at once. I think the largest number I fought was 5 at a time. But sometimes you're confined to just a small space where it's hard to move around, and it's much harder to just beat the crap out of them like you need to. When I first started playing the game, I was trying to just shoot everything, and that's when I realized all the enemies are just bullet sponges, and they take a ridiculous number of shots. And then I started using the melee attack, and that kind of helped, but not really. I didn't notice any like baseline power-ups for your punch and your kick or for your gun, so I don't know if those are in the game. You do find some like special guns or temporary weapons, like a shotgun and a machine gun, and I'm assuming there are more throughout the game, but I just did not notice those. Because you have to reload your gun, you do pick up a lot of ammo along the way. This is only ammo for your pistol. You don't find more ammo for like the other guns that you can pick up, which I understood that because they were just pistol clips, but it kind of made me feel like I should be finding some shotgun ammo or something along the way. The bosses all have like some kind of a unique ability or some pattern to them that you can exploit. So that's kind of cool. I like that they all feel very different from the normal monsters that you're going to be fighting. And you do occasionally run into some flying monsters, much like you did in the arcade game. In House of the Dead. Overall, the gameplay is fine. It has some issues just because, it's a beat 'em up, and every beat 'em up has kind of the same basic problem with it, where eventually you get tired of just punching things or shooting them, so it can get a little monotonous if you're in this for the long haul. And it also relies heavily on its arcade roots, so it is supposed to be a quarter muncher, and you will eventually run out of lives. I also really didn't like the timer on this. It just was more annoying. So each level or each kind of stage that you go to, you've got a short timer to kill all the enemies and then advance to the next stage. This just sort of felt like more of an annoyance because you would have the numbers flashing on the screen, and it was kind of like, yeah, I got it, just leave me the hell alone. But yeah, overall, the gameplay is pretty solid for what it is, and yeah, I had a lot of fun playing it for a while. Zombie Revenge looks pretty good. By the time the Dreamcast was released, there wasn't much of a gap between how arcade games looked and how home console games looked. So when they ported this game over, they didn't have to really change too much in order to make it fit onto a Dreamcast disc. The game uses a pretty good camera. It's really well done. It doesn't fly all over the place. It isn't controlled by the player, so it's really great. It does follow you. It never kind of gets stuck on something. What I'm saying is the camera angles are all really great. I don't really feel like rambling on about it. Once you get past like the first stage, then the enemies get really cool looking. They stop being just like generic zombies, and they start being kind of more mutants and monsters that have been, experimented on in the lab and thrown out there. The game has a lot of other like visual cues telling you where you're supposed to go, what items you're picking up, and just what you're supposed to be doing. Like you see the big flashing blue sign that says, hey, open this shutter. You'll also get some cues to, you need to save the hostages, you need to insert a disk in a computer, you need to do this, this, and this. It's kind of nice to have these here just because it is pretty chaotic at times, so having that flashing up there, I didn't find it too much of a distraction, unlike the rather annoying timer. I really just found all the labeling of everything kind of a really nice quality of life thing that a lot of beat 'em ups didn't do. So it was fun to see all this stuff, so you can easily identify what weapons you're picking up, where the ammo is, all the antidotes that you need, and just where you need to go and what you need to do. Even though the levels are not, very big, it's pretty easy to figure out what's going on. I could see someone getting a little bit lost or kind of getting disoriented with the camera changes. Overall, I really like the look of this game. There's just something about Dreamcast games that I really enjoy. They were still kind of in the early 3D times, so you didn't have all the really clunky looking graphics from the mid-90s, but you didn't have everything being really smooth like it was with PS2 and Xbox. They were getting there, but the Dreamcast was kind of that mid-step between those graphic styles. And yeah, a lot of these games just kind of have a charm that I really like for some odd reason. I think that's the best way that I can put it. They're kind of charming in their own way. Zombie Revenge is a fine beat-em-up game. It does have some glaring issues to it that were pretty common with other beat-em-ups that were brought over from the arcades, and really just other arcade games in general. It is a terrific concept to fight a bunch of zombies, but the use of guns felt like more of a detriment to this game than if they had just stuck with, let's do melee weapons and then have some special guns thrown in. I wanted to compare this to something, and I honestly would compare it to the Die Hard arcade game or Dynamite Cop, where you're still a police officer, but you're not relying on firearms. You're mostly just punching the hell out of things, and then occasionally you would find some kind of a special weapon. I think that would have been a better direction for this to have gone in instead of just having a bunch of bullet sponge enemies out there. Zombie Revenge is an interesting game for a few reasons. Just the fact that it tries to be a beat-em-up, and I also feel like it tries to be a shooter, but it doesn't really do either of them well enough to say that this is a great game. It's fun, but it's really just more of an average game. I do like that this is a spin-off of the House of the Dead games. It didn't really need to be, and the ties are barely there, but it is kind of fun that they are there in some ways. It doesn't tie into the main series as far as I know, but if I've got that wrong, please correct me in the comments. It's a really fun beat-em-up game, and I would like to play it more or play the arcade with somebody, on an actual arcade cabinet. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and have a great day, everybody. Bye.